Subscribe to Bloody Monday and watch chilling horror stories almost every week. Don't forget to press the bell icon.
Let me tell you a story about my move to New York City. I'd only been there a couple of days, and I loved the fast-paced life of the city. And I was really excited to live in my new apartment that was located on the 17th floor of the building. I was carefully analyzing the apartment before finalizing my room. I walked into a garden-facing room. I felt something weird about the ambience of that room, but the view from the window was amazing, and I ended up taking that room. A month had passed since I was living there with my roommates. One night my roommates were out to a party, but my exams were right around the corner, so I decided to stay back. I was going through the reading material on my study table near the window. Suddenly, a coffee mug fell from the table and made a very loud noise, as if someone had picked up the mug and smashed it on the floor. From that night, I couldn't concentrate on my studies. Whenever I sat down to study, I felt someone's presence. Sometimes I felt there was somebody walking just outside my room. I ignored it for a long time, but one night, when I looked outside the window, I saw a black shadow creeping down the building's pipe. I was very scared and straight away went off to sleep. The next morning when I woke up, I told my roommates everything about the last few nights. But they didn't believe me and said, "You must have been worked up." I thought maybe those guys were right. I decided I won't study late at night. Instead, we'll get up early the next morning. So I set my alarm for 6 in the morning and went back to bed. But exactly at 1 a.m. in the night, my alarm started ringing. I opened my eyes, but I was taken aback after seeing the time. I quickly got up and turned on all the light switches in the room. The bulb did light up, but all the lights were extremely dim. I once again heard the loud footsteps of someone running outside my window. I gathered courage to look outside, but again I saw that black shadow, this time creeping up the building's pipe. That shadow was coming closer and closer to my window. I quickly shut the window, and the moment I turned back, I found a horrific shadow hanging from the fan right above my bed, staring right into my eyes. I was numb at this dangerous sight. The black shadow that was creeping up the pipe was now right behind me. It started banging my window. That's when the shadow hanging from the fan shouted at me, and I screamed out of fear. My roommates heard my scream and came running to my room. Even the neighbors came in. When my roommates came in, they found that all the lights in the room were on, and I was crying in a corner. I told everyone about the incident that happened with me. Oliver, who lived in the adjoining flat, told us that a lot of people had seen the black shadow climbing up and down the water pipes and around the garden. 3 years ago, an alcoholic man used to live alone in one of the apartments on that floor. One day, he was found dead in the apartment all by himself. After that, 2 bachelors had moved into the same apartment, and after some time, they committed suicide for reasons unknown to everyone. On learning this, my friends and I left that flat and moved elsewhere. But till this date, the memories of that night haunt me.
This is the story of David, who lived in a small town in the States. It was the night of Halloween, and everybody was busy celebrating it. Halloween night is celebrated in the memory of those close ones who are no longer in this world. For instance, family members, soldiers who died in the war, or people who contributed a lot towards society. It is believed that on this night, a passage opens between the real world and the world of the dead, and the people who remember that day come to meet their loved ones through that passage. David was also busy in the preparation of Halloween, and his Uncle Anderson had invited him over for dinner. Uncle Anderson's wife had been missing for the past 4 years, and since then he had been acting very strangely. David didn't like his uncle one bit, but he was very fond of his aunt, and that's why he decided to meet his uncle after 4 years. When he reached there, he was taken aback by seeing Uncle Anderson's condition. It seemed he hasn't slept for years. None of the light bulbs in the house were turned on, except one. David felt very uncomfortable over there. He was talking to his uncle when he heard someone in the kitchen. It sounded as if someone was cooking. This reminded him of his aunt, who always used to cook for him whenever he visited them. He asked his uncle, "Is there anyone else in the house?" His uncle quickly dismissed him by saying there was no one else. After a while, that lone light bulb started to flicker. When Uncle Anderson went to check it, somebody called David's name. David, I had been waiting for you. What took you so long? The voice was clearly of his aunt. Auntie? Is that you? In that flickering light, he saw the spirit of his aunt, who was standing right in front of him. Then the spirit quietly went towards the basement of the house. David somehow managed the courage to follow the spirit. When he reached the basement, the spirit was nowhere to be found, but what he saw was the most horrific thing he had ever seen. He straight away called the police and told them everything. He saw a statue of Satan, the devil god, and in front of it laid 4 rotten dead bodies. David started feeling dizzy and fell on the floor unconscious. When David woke up, he couldn't move. He was tied up on the chair, and Uncle Anderson was praying to Satan. David thought this was going to be the last day of his life. But fortunately for David, the police arrived just in time. The police arrested his uncle and managed to save David's life. After the interrogation, they came to know that out of the 4 dead bodies, one of them was his wife's. The 3 remaining bodies were the people who have gone missing from the city in the past 4 years. Every Halloween's night, Anderson sacrificed one life to Satan, so the devil god can make him immortal. That's why he had murdered all those 4 people. Maybe David wouldn't have lived if his aunt's spirit didn't appear in front of him at the right time. David took away all the bodies and gave each of them a proper burial. Since then, every Halloween night, he devotes his time in public service.
The Haunted Bungalow. In the 1980s, there was a complicated case in a court of England where it took the judge a long time to decide whether the criminal was a human or a ghost. The story is about a businessman named Victor and his wife Jenny. It had been a long time since Victor and Jenny were married, and they had recently moved to England. They bought an old bungalow. Before Victor and Jenny started living there, the family that had resided in the bungalow died under mysterious circumstances. People said that whoever lived in that bungalow never survived. One night, Victor and Jenny had a fight. Victor was mad at Jenny, so he went to the study and started reading a book. He found a very old book with the title, Talking to a Ghost. Victor started reading the book, and while he was reading, he felt someone was standing beside him and staring at him. Frightened, he looked around, but he couldn't find anyone. The book read that in ancient times, people used to burn pieces of glass and chant mantras to call a ghost. He was reading the book when suddenly he heard Jenny scream. He left the book and ran towards Jenny. He found Jenny holding a photograph in her hands. Jenny couldn't stop screaming. When Victor saw the photo, it was him, holding a cup of coffee in the photo. The photo was from 2 weeks ago. But he didn't understand what there was to scream about. Because Jenny wouldn't stop screaming, Victor gave her sleeping pills and put her down to bed. Victor was a little anxious after reading that book, and he started roaming around the bungalow. While he was roaming around, he came to the basement of the bungalow. It seemed as if the basement had burned down long back. When he reached the corner of the basement, he found a few pieces of burnt glass. Victor felt very uneasy and thought of leaving the basement. The moment he turned to go, he saw 5 dead bodies that were staring at him. The dead bodies were completely burnt. But suddenly all of them got up. The dead bodies shouted, "Run away!" Frightened, Victor asked, "What are you talking about?" That's when all the dead bodies went mum and just kept staring back at him. Victor once again inquired what they were talking about, but still, the dead bodies stood still. That's when Victor realized that the dead bodies weren't staring at him, but looking at someone standing behind him. Victor quickly turned behind and found a very terrifying being looking at him. The ghost was holding the same burnt piece of glass that Victor saw in the corner a while back. Victor at once ran away from the basement and went to his bedroom. When he entered the bedroom, he found Jenny sleepwalking and writing something on the wall. Victor told Jenny that they'll have to leave immediately, but Jenny went on writing something with a piece of glass. When Victor went near her, he saw that the photo frame, which Jenny had been looking at and all but gone crazy, was broken near the bed. Victor was now able to see something in that photo that probably made Jenny scream. In that photo, a spirit was choking Victor and Jenny was lying unconscious next to him. Victor got terrified, and he tried a lot to wake up Jenny, but she went on writing on the wall. She had written, "This is the house of the dead. Go away." Victor managed to pick her up in his arms and started running out of the bungalow. The moment he reached the stairs, he thought someone is strangling him by the neck. Jenny slipped out of Victor's hands and fell down the stairs. Victor, too, fainted. After a few hours, when Victor regained consciousness, he saw that Jenny's head was badly hurt. He took her to the hospital, but it was too late. Jenny was dead, and the police arrested Victor for Jenny's murder. Victor's lawyer told the entire story to the judge in the courtroom. He told that the family that lived in the bungalow before Victor and Jenny had also died under mysterious circumstances. But when the police investigated, they neither found the piece of glass in the basement, nor did they find anything written on the wall of the bedroom. Even that photo was placed properly on their dressing table. The only thing they found was the book which Victor was reading. When the judge heard all this, he came to the conclusion that it was all a made-up story by Victor. The judge declared Victor guilty, and in a few days, his death sentence was executed. What people said proved to be true. No one who lived in that bungalow ever survived.
Haunted House, The Grudge. Emma shifted to a new house along with her daughter Suzanne, her son Matthew, and Matthew's partner Jennifer. The man they bought the house from was in a hurry to sell off the property and move away from that place, and that is why they got the house at a very low price. As soon as Emma entered the place, she gazed intently at the ceiling of the house. Watching her stand still, her family members were a bit anxious, but Emma was soon back to normal. The new house was a little strange, and Jennifer didn't feel so good about it. One day, while Jennifer was sitting in front of the mirror, she saw that a woman was standing behind her. The woman had long, messy hair, and she gave a death stare to Jennifer. As soon as Jennifer turned, the woman had disappeared. Such sights had now become a common phenomenon in the house. Sometimes she sees a kid who'd open his mouth and scream at the top of his lungs. This deafening scream would make Jennifer shut her ears in trauma. Jennifer had started finding out about who lived in the house before them. She found a few photos in the basement of the house. The photos were of a family, and she also spotted that same screaming kid in those photos. She took those photos and went around in the neighborhood asking about that family in the photo. The people around told her that the house is cursed, and that is why the owner sold off the house at such a cheap rate and ran away. They further told her that a long time ago a family lived in that house. There were 3 people in that family: husband, wife, and their kid. The wife was having an affair with some other guy, and her husband came to know about this. On finding out, the husband brutally murdered his wife. The son saw his mother's murder with his own eyes, screamed, and tried to run away from the house. Out of rage and to shut the kid's mouth, the man killed his own son. But the spirit of the woman and the kid never left that house. The man continued to live in the house, but a few days later, the spirit of his wife killed him. The entire family was murdered in the same house. It is believed that all of the 3 family members' spirits reside in the house, and they kill everyone who decides to stay in that house. On finding out all of this, Jennifer was really scared, and she ran back to the house to tell everyone about what she just heard. On reaching there, she found something that she wouldn't have ever imagined. Each and every family member was already dead. Suddenly, all the dead bodies stared at Jennifer. She ran to the terrace, but all of them followed her there. The dead people started walking towards her, and Jennifer ran away from them. In a hurry, Jennifer slipped and lost her balance and fell from the terrace on the road. Just then, a speeding car ran over her body, and she died on the spot. As people say, no one survives in that house. If you like this story, subscribe to our channel Bloody Monday for spine-chilling horror stories every Monday.